Hello and welcome to the 2016 NBA Expansion Draft. It's me, Jared, your Vancouver Ravens insider. Today decides how the Vancouver Ravens will start their legacy. Will they come roaring out of the gate, or will they stumble through a tough season? Without further ado, the Ravens have the first pick. Just as many thought they would, they take Joffrey Laverne, a good offensive and rebounding center from the Denver Nuggets. The Seattle Sonics stick to form and take Kyle Anderson, the young small forward, from the Spurs. Jonas Jerebko goes next, a good floor spacer from the 4 position. Next, the Ravens select Shelvin Mack, a playmaking point guard from Utah. They then look to facilitate their big man position and take Nemanja Bjelica, power forward from the Minnesota Timberwolves. Next, the Seattle Sonics take Kosta Koufos, a center from the Kings, and also take Archie Goodwin, a young shooting guard. With their next pick, the Vancouver Ravens select Derek Williams. He's a small forward who is more of a tweener than a true small forward. He has a player option, but many people believe he will accept that option. Filling up the power forward position, the Vancouver Ravens next select Kevin Looney, one of the younger players in the draft. He was projected to go a little bit later, but the Ravens reached and took him, banking on his youth more than his talent right now. The Seattle Sonics took Joseph Young, the next best point guard on the board. JaVale McGee goes to the Sonics after that. A wild card player, but having him play the backup means he won't hurt your team as much if he doesn't play so well. Next, the Vancouver Ravens select Tim Hardaway Jr., one of the better scoring options out of the shooting guard position. He should fill this team out off the bench fairly well. Delon Wright's a good playmaking point guard with a bit of potential. At 24 and good size, he could develop into a good player all around. Rashawn Holmes goes to the Sonics, as does Jordan Adams, the young shooting guard from the Memphis Grizzlies. Next, the Vancouver Ravens are looking to add some defense to their roster, and they take Tony Snell, a 3-and-D small forward who can also play the shooting guard position. He'll help the team on the defensive side of the ball and could potentially earn some starting minutes. Mitch McGary goes next, a troubled center/power forward from the Oklahoma City Thunder. If he can get his act together off the court, he'll be a good player on the court. Damian Inglis goes next to the Vancouver Ravens, a young, small forward with potential to grow into a good player. Not a ton of talent right now, though. Again, looking to add on the defensive side of the ball, the Vancouver Ravens go out and select KJ McDaniels, an athletic 2/3 who can play defense, get to the basket, and occasionally shoot the 3. With the 12th pick in this draft, the Vancouver Ravens select Cliff Alexander from Portland. Most of the players left are bench players, and they wanted to go with youth, take a player who's got to get a bit of potential. At 20 years old and 6'8", he's got an athletic build, maybe slightly undersized for the power forward position, but he could eventually become a good energy player. With their final pick in the draft, the Vancouver Ravens select Aaron Harrison, a young combo guard from the Charlotte Hornets. He won't get a ton of play time this year, but he could play some decent minutes at both the shooting guard and point guard position. Going over the draft once again, the Vancouver Ravens took Joffrey Laverne, a good young scoring big man. They then got Shelvin Mack, a good facilitating point guard, Nemanja Bjelica, a veteran from the EuroLeague who can score on the outside and score on the inside as well. They then got Derek Williams, a tweener who should play the 3 position for them, Kevin Looney, a good young power forward, Tim Hardaway Jr., a good scoring and offensive shooting guard, Delon Wright, a good facilitating point guard at the backup position, Tony Snell, a 3-and-D player who could potentially fight for some starting minutes, Mitch McGary, a wild card again, but someone who could play good minutes for them. They then got Damian Inglis and KJ McDaniels, 2 athletic players who could develop into good players. They then got Cliff Alexander and Aaron Harrison to round off their lineups. Kyle Anderson goes to the Seattle Sonics, as well as Jonas Jerebko. Anderson's got potential, but not a true identity right now. They then solidify their big man position with Costa Kufos, a good rebounding and alright defensive player. Archie Goodwin's a player that is interesting. It'll be quite the story to see where he actually plays this season as far as what position, if he'll be playing shooting guard or point guard. Joseph Young and JaVale McGee go next, rounding out their starting lineup with Joseph Young and adding to their bench with JaVale McGee. Rashawn Holmes and Jordan Adams add to the youth of this team, Rashawn Holmes being a tenacious rebounder and Jordan Adams being a very good scorer. Sergei Karasev and Spencer Dinwiddie add to their bench strength, as well as their youth. Anthony Brown and CJ Wilcox add to their offensive power, CJ Wilcox being a shooter and Anthony Brown being quite athletic. They round off their picks with Josh McRoberts. Looking at some of the prospects the Vancouver Ravens should be considering, their number one guy should be Brandon Ingram, who you can see shooting around right here. He's a good player, and just as you see him doing, he's a good shooter. He can't create a shot for himself really, but have him run off some screens, get some open looks, especially from three. He could be a good offensive player. He's most likely going to go either first or second, most likely second, so it would be difficult to see him falling to the fifth spot, which the Ravens have, but he'd be basically a dream come true for them. He's not a very good defender, however, and you'd have to work on that. His rebounding numbers are decent, but again, you'd want to bring those up a little bit. He could develop into a good shot maker and shot creator, and that would be what they'd be banking on, really. And if he can do that, he would basically be a dream come true for this team. However, they most likely won't get him, but they really need wing depth. Looking at another player, and possibly a fan favorite, Jamal Murray, the freshman coming out of Kentucky. He's a good shooting guard, comes from Canada, which is why he's a fan favorite. He'd be a good scorer, but much like Brandon Ingram, he can't really create his own shot. You could see him running off screens, playing the catch and shoot role, but he won't impact the team as a primary ball handler and shot creator right away. However, he can play both the shooting guard and point guard position, so that would be a good addition to the roster, and he is slated to go closer to the Sonics pick, so it wouldn't be as hard seeing him slip to the fifth role. Again, he's not a very solid defender, but he shows that he can potentially grow into a good defender. If he shows that he's more of a point guard, you have a facilitating, shooting, scoring point guard on your roster. I could see them definitely going with him. Changing pace quite a bit, but still sticking with the wing position, Jaylen Brown, the freshman coming out of University of California. He's an athletic defensive shooting guard. This team really needs offense, but bringing in a player who's got a defensive identity certainly isn't a bad thing. His offense is mainly going to be slashing to the basket, maybe a couple shots from three. He really doesn't have much of a mid-range shot, and he's not a very reliable three-point scorer. But having him run off screens and slash to the basket, he could get a little bit, maybe 10 points. But, like I said, he's going to be a very good defender as soon as he comes into the draft. He's very athletic, so he's got a ton of potential, and it could be fun if he was drafted into the same conference as Brandon Ingram, watching those two guys battle it out for years, really. He's a good rebounder, very good athlete. His offense needs to improve as far as his shooting ability, but he could be a good player. Up next, one of the four-year players that they could be looking at is Buddy Hield. I don't suggest they take Chris Dunn, as Shelvin Mack's going to be a decent starting point guard for them, but if everyone's taken and Chris Dunn's on the board, it may be a good idea to take him, as he could be a very good player for many years to come. Buddy Hield, however, would fill a gap at the shooting guard position. He's a very good scorer. Again, not a good defender. He may be a slightly better shot creator, but that's just because of experience. His ceiling isn't as high as many other players, so I'd only see him being taken if all the other young freshmen are off the board at this point, like Ben Simmons, Brandon Ingram, Jamal Murray, Jaylen Brown. If they're all off the board, I could see them taking Buddy Hield or potentially Chris Dunn, but really they should target one of the younger players to bring to their roster. He's a good player, but certainly not a franchise cornerstone, which is probably what they're looking at right now and what they should be getting. Going into the second round, there aren't a ton of wing talents, which is really what this team needs. One of the players that they could look at is Malachi Richardson. He's slated to go late first round, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him slip into the second round. And with the first pick in the second round, the Ravens could certainly take him, and even if they draft a wing in the first round, I would suggest they take him to add even more depth to that wing position. Looking at some other players from the second round that could be taken, there's Jakob Poeltl. He's a question mark as to whether or not he'll go in the first round, late in the first round, or early in the second round. He's a solid defender and rebounder. He's not incredibly athletic. He's more of a pass me the ball in the low block, I'll post up and score for you guy, but he could be a good player in this league for a while, potentially like Steven Adams. Next, there's Yorios Papagiannis out of Greece. He's a good center, a project, slated to go late in the second round, so they'd definitely be able to get their hands on him. However, he may not be the best option. They really should look for a big man in the second round if they don't get a wing talent. If they do, get a wing talent in the first round. Soon the NBA draft will come and all our speculation will be over. In the meantime, it's been me, Jared. I will see you guys later. Have a good night, and Ravens fly.